significant this could be if this does turn into a trade war. Dagen McDowell is here, David Asman, along with market watcher Dan Geltrude, and Catalina Magazine's Cathy Areu. All right, Dagen, how big a deal is this potentially going to be?
It's already a really big deal. You've seen steel prices shoot up about 50% in the last year. This introduces the kind of uncertainty that we would be sitting here if it was President Barack Obama, we would be pulling our hair out. It introduces uncertainty into the business community when we've finally gotten good news on tax cuts, regulatory reform. The job market, as you've been pointing out, is actually picking up steam despite being more than 9 years into an expansion. But again, for American businesses that use steel and aluminum, and anybody who exports to Canada or Mexico and to Europe, those businesses are sitting back going, what's going to happen to my sales? What's going to happen to how I source my materials? Am I going to have to cut wages? Am I going to have to slow my hiring? And these are questions that are not being answered, and this administration won't be able to answer them for months, if not years to come.
What do you think, David?
I think what Dagen said is absolutely true. Everything is true. However, as much as I hate tariffs and the Europeans hate tariffs, they hate tariffs if we put them on, but they have a lot of tariffs of their own. We put together a list of the tariffs that they have just on steel, iron, and aluminum for most favored nation. They have 1,200 tariffs on most favored nation countries. Wow. Those are their friends. Total EU tariffs are about 20,000 for most favored nations. So while they hate tariffs when we apply them, they have no trouble applying them themselves.
You know, they're fighting fire with fire. I guess the idea being that they'll never have to be used. The deal will be had beforehand. Do you think that's
well? It's all part of the negotiations. But here's what I say, Neil. If we don't do something now, when are we ever going to do anything? We're just going to accept trade deficits. That's how it is. We have to have the lowest tariffs compared to all of our trade partners? No. I don't know if it's by accident or if Trump's a genius, but the timing is perfect. We have a strong economy. Now's the time to straighten this issue out. If we don't do it now, we will be in a weakened position perhaps somewhere down the line. It's the right time to do it. Nobody likes tariffs, but we have to address the issue.
Cathy, I know you're in the Trump is a genius category, so take it from there.
Oh, boy. So I don't know if he's a genius, but he is riding the momentum right now of unemployment at an all-time low. So the momentum is wonderful, and now is the time to pull what an economist is saying, a psychotic trade war. Now is the time we should do it. We should break trust relationships that have taken centuries to build with our neighbors, with Mexico and Canada.
Democrats, liberals love shielding industries.
Our neighbor, we don't like hurting our relationships with Canada and Mexico, our biggest trade partners.
But you don't mind propping up solar. You don't mind running tax-favored treatment to things that you like, right?
I was discussing Trump being a genius and the timing being wrong. And,
okay. Well, you raise a good point. But is the larger issue here that be careful what you wish for, Mr. President, because you just could get it, and then, of course, it's a war.
Yes.
It's heading in that direction, certainly, going after Canada and Mexico and Europe allies. This is not just a financial and economic issue. It's a political one come the midterms. And it's also a national security issue. When you talk about, we get a lot of our steel from Canada, that actually hurts our national security rather than helping it, as the Commerce Department and these trade reps would argue. I want the president and his representatives, I want Peter Navarro and Wilbur Ross to actually start calling the 6.5 million workers in this country who work for steel-consuming industries. Call the people who make motorboats, who are apple farmers in this country, who are going to be hurt by the retaliatory tariffs. If you go through the list of industries that are being hit in retaliation by Europe, Canada, and Mexico, these are American small business owners and farmers far and wide, and they deserve an explanation. And I want some intellectual honesty. Tell the American people, we're raising your prices. We might cost you your job. We're doing this because we need to reduce the trade deficit.
As Dagen was saying at the beginning, particularly on the heels of such a magnificent success. I mean, you think of the way this economy has turned. I want to be clear. I think this, in terms of the economy and national security, I think this is the best president we've had since Reagan. However, and this gets gets to your point on trade deficits. I think his insistence that the key to a good economy is getting a trade balance is wrong. Forgive me, Mr. President, you're right on so many other things, but on this, you're dead wrong. One of the historically biggest trade deficits we'd ever had up until that point was 1984. You know how much the economy grew in 1984? 7.3%.
So we're chasing the wrong ghost?
So his insistence that trade deficits by themselves are the key to a healthy economy is wrong.
There's going to be little gain. I mean, all this talk, it's unpredictable. And at the end of the day, it's going to be little gain. This is for nothing. What is this all about?
Nothing's gone into effect yet. No one's paying this 25% yet, the 10% yet. Now,
if he gets his way, what will happen?
Well, we'll see. If it doesn't, it worked, right?
Well,
Okay.
Wall Street doesn't agree. As we see on the stock market, none of this talk
Wall
of
Street
trade
worried
war.
about a trade. Of course, Wall Street isn't a genius, but I mean, for now, they seem to be whistling, some would say, past the graveyard.
And Wall Street, I think, is getting accustomed to a president who talks big before. I think it's no coincidence, by the way. John Uber, our great producer, pointed this out. It's no coincidence.
I wouldn't call him great.
Well, he's okay.
He's a very nice guy.
But he made a great point, which is that Wilbur Ross right now is in China. He's not in Europe, he's in China. Maybe all of this stuff with Europe and Canada and Mexico is a warning to China. That's the way this president works. He says,
there's a method. There's a method to this.
I agree with you.
All
It's about China.
No, it's half-baked. The method is half-baked because if you wanted to take on China...
Didn't you see the Wilbur Ross thing with the can of soup?
Yeah.
That's right.
And the beer.
Half-baked.
Yeah. Again, stop telling the American people this isn't going to have any impact on the economy and their jobs and their lives. And by the way, if you really want to take on China and push back on them stealing American technology, demanding us to hand over our technological prowess, then you lock arms with Europe and Canada and Mexico because as a bigger
But a lot of
force
them
they
are
could take them
deceitful
on.
little phonies too, right? I mean, no? Okay.
Well, they're not little.
All right, well.
They're big phonies.
They're big phonies. Kathy, you're optimistic as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm just thinking, what are you going to do to these trusted relationships? It took centuries to build them, and now you're tearing them apart.
I am, really? Okay.
With your words.
All right, we're
My
just doing a
goodness.
segment on this
My
on cable.
goodness.
All right, so just relax. All right, my producer's saying, okay, there goes that credibility. Don't worry about it. I blew that a long time ago. All right, did you hear this now? They're trying to resurrect Roseanne's show without